Stream has started. And now let's see who accepts it.
Hello, hello, hello. Nothing that me go get through tonight.
Okay,
I feel
Twitch
what
has
my
started.
peace.
Twitch has accepted the stream. YouTube has accepted the stream. And Facebook
I
has accepted
need
the
like a
stream.
man's when I
Okay, good.
Now,
Very
Leighton can hear us and we can hear him, right?
right,
How,
right.
how come he doesn't seem to be like communicating with us, though?
Leighton, you can hear us, right?
No, it does not look like he can.
Oh
Huh.
no. Oh no.
What is going on here?
Hmm.
Let's try this. Can you hear us now, Leighton? All right, so we take that, and now we go to. Can you hear us now, Leighton?
Yes.
All right, great.
Yay.
All right,
And
this
we
is
can
good.
hear you.
Great. We love that. We love that.
Okay, we're at that point now where I can start the countdown when you tell me to.
Okay, I think now we're ready to go.
All right,
Okay.
here we go. When it says on the air, you're on the air, okay?
Great. It'll be a talking circle format.
All right.
Right. Okay.
Sounds good.
Welcome to Talking Peace with the Western New York Peace Center, being recorded by Richard Wicca at Think Twice Radio in the home of the future. Thanks so much, Richard. And thank you, too, to our friends at WBNY. It's Buffalo's original alternative radio station, 91.3 FM, coming out of Buff State. Thank you, Buff State and WBNY. And when I think of thankfulness, I think of our friends, the Haudenosaunee, then the Seneca in particular, on whose land we're all of us who are actually going to be on this show are all sitting on Seneca land. Mm-hmm. And I just want to acknowledge and appreciate and learn from and stand with in allyship our dear Seneca family, siblings, and I just want to recognize that the land has been taken through trickery, violence, and attempts at attempted genocide. So there's a lot of work still to be done, and that includes for our Black and brown brothers and sisters who've been enslaved in all kinds of ways, directly and indirectly here and abroad, actually, through colonialism and oppressive capitalist structures. So we have a lot of work to do, but that thankfulness is always there, and that's what the Gnonyo that our Haudenosaunee friends start everything with, every day and every event, with a reminder about thanking all the people who are there, thanking Mother Earth for providing everything that we need, thankfulness for all of the wonderful plants and medicinal and nutritional plants and all the different animals and creatures that are the flying, the crawling, the swimming, the four-leggeds, and so many, and they give us so many lessons and so much support in so many ways. All our brother sun, our grandmother moon, and of course the Creator, and all of the love that really makes it all go round. So then they would say Nyahweh, and the people say Nyo. So Nyahweh.
No.
Thank you. Well, I'm very excited about our show today because we're going to be talking about the Anti-Displacement Summit that just took place in the previous year, but still just very short while ago. And our city, Buffalo, and the different many issues that were addressed in that summit, and plenty of things that we're working on now. So I just want to say I'm really thrilled about our guests, and I'll just go in the Haudenosaunee way of going counterclockwise, I want to introduce Harper Bishop. Harper, thanks so much for coming.
Thank you for having me, Vicky. Excited to be here.
As you and Leighton Jones. Hi, Leighton.
Hi, thanks for having us.
Thanks for coming. And both of you are from our city, Buffalo, and our city, Buffalo, and our city, Action, Buffalo, right?
That's right. You nailed it, Vicky. Good job.
Yeah. Now, what I didn't know was what your respective job functions were. So what would you call? I mean, you're both organizers, and you're both movers and shakers. So is that right? Is that what you call yourselves? Organizers or?
So I'm the director, and Leighton is the communications coordinator, who I think we've also maybe lost again in his ability to speak to us right now, unfortunately.
No, you're still there, right, Leighton?
Yes.
You're able to hear us?
Oh, you can. Oh, okay. Okay, good.
I just can't see you, but I can hear you.
I'm just so glad that you have your dog with you, and my cat is not. So, and please introduce your dog.
Oh, this is not my dog, but this is Aspen, and I am dog sitting him right now.
Okay. Well, we love all our dogs. We don't own any dogs. We just might be responsible, or we might not. But anyway, so thank you, Leighton, and thank you both for coming. And of course, last but not least, Melissa Leonard. Melissa, thank you so much for coming on. Melissa is a teacher, an educator, a mom, and a longtime activist, and Seneca sister who's just done a tremendous amount. So welcome, Melissa.
Thanks, Vicky. I appreciate it.
So before we really get started in earnest, we're talking about the Anti-Displacement Summit and the issues and some of the many issues that were addressed in that summit. There were all kinds of presentations and et cetera. But so when we think of anti-displacement and we think about some of the things that we talked about there, and also the things that we think about when we think about working against displacement of peoples, what are the values that you really want to remember? So if we just go around with that, what values do you think are most important when thinking about displacement or working against displacement? So Harper?
Well, I was actually going to give the first word to Melissa here, and also thank them for being, a guest and presenting. We were so happy to have you. So I would love to have the first word be given to you, and then I know you were going in a particular order, Vicky, but I think it makes the most sense here to have Melissa speak first.
Well, it's the Haudenosaunee thing.
Yes, of course.
Sure. No, I understand though. I think because the Senecas were the original displacement. And
exactly.
What I've been working on the last year, since my father passed away, is really delving into the story of what happened here in Buffalo, because I knew that the Senecas were here, and I ultimately didn't have the story. I didn't know what happened. How were they removed? And what I've been doing is going into the archives at the History Museum and the library downtown and reading primary documents of who it affected. And ultimately, a lot of the letters are my relatives, Parker family relatives, who were writing about the history, which was a very stressful time. They didn't know what was going to happen to them. And it was ultimately a conflict between the Ogden Land Company trying to sell off the land and their struggle with trying to hold on to it. So over the last year, I've been trying to put that story together. And I think one of my goals and my purpose has become trying to tell that story, because I don't think it's known. And so that's been my passion the last year, and I'm just looking for opportunities to tell that story.
So
So
I hear a couple of things that are about principles when you're speaking of all of that, which is one is the research and knowing this story, and then people telling their own story, and actually implicitly what you just did, Harper, of like first people speaking first, is that just what we want to do with a land acknowledgement is that acknowledging the importance, and the displacement and the issues and the many unresolved. And the one you're talking about, we'll talk some more. Definitely, that is a big, huge one that I think we can get behind and maybe do something about. So, Harper, what would you say for some?
Yeah, so I think piggybacking on that, we want to acknowledge it. The indigenous peoples and the first people are the folks who are displaced, first and foremost. And, I would talk about local action here is that I think that and particularly why we made sure that, indigenous leaders like Melissa were invited, particularly to this summit, because a lot of people are watching Israel and Palestine happen. And they're watching that in real time, and we wanted to localize that story and make sure that people understand that that's just not Israel and Palestine and what's happening over there, or colonial and imperialism and policies from the West and from the United States, but actually that's happening in real time, and also that it's not past history, right? We can go to the History Museum, we can look in those archives, and I think that's like very compelling to have the family story that you're telling, Melissa. But also that people need to understand that it's like ongoing, and the policies that are being championed by such people as our New York State Governor, Kathy Hochul, are incredibly anti-Indigenous and have really benefited just multi-billionaires and millionaires and other people. And so we wanted to ground the story locally, make sure that folks understood and were educated by local leaders on displacement that is still happening, and that the harm is still perpetuating and compounded by policies both of our municipal government, our state government, and federal government. And so all those things come bearing down. And as an organization, our city Buffalo and our city Action Buffalo is really about the work locally, what we can do right here. We only work in the city proper. And so even the story of Buffalo Creek, I think to many people, they go to what they call Silo City now and don't know about the story of even Buffalo Creek. And so bringing out, what is our Buffalo history is important. And then, of course, we can get into, later in the show, just talking about policies that and interconnected and interrelated work that we're doing that have just compounded the trauma, I think that's been occurring, and the displacement of Indigenous, Black, Brown, and working poor in the city of Buffalo.
Thanks so much, Harper. Absolutely. So those are all, very important, and certainly the ongoing nature and the very current real effects that the current injustices and the legacy of all the injustices too are all reflected all around us. So thank you for that. And Leighton, what would you say for some principles that you want to think about in this relation to displacement?
I mean, the word that came to my mind was accountability. I often think that the opposing side of the person that is being displaced lacks accountability and doesn't understand how deep the land runs, or how deep whatever they're displacing in that moment, how it feels to the people that they are displacing. And it speaks to the character of people, and like their mindset, the growth that they might have or might need to develop. But we all need to learn in some degree, right? And so, I mean, we can't blame someone for being ignorant, but we can blame them when they can seek information on their own and tend not to do so, right? And so that's the word that came to my mind. Yeah.
Well, thank you. Accountability is so critical. Absolutely. That is a huge piece. And that's about, the current situation and moving on from it, making those changes. So I'm going to pick the usual ones that I think of. I always think of Dr. King talking about unarmed truth and unconditional love, that truth and love will have the final word in reality. And so we are here telling our truths, and they're definitely the truth, and then talking about it with that. Well, I think of Cornel West saying, justice is what love looks like in public. That is the public face of what we need. And that's what we need for accountability, for people telling their own stories, that we deeply listen and then do what needs to be done to right those wrongs. So the old ones, the new ones, the in-between ones, so many ones that need to be changed. And there was so much of that came out in the Anti-Displacement Summit. So if we want to move on to really maybe a little bit the history of the summit, and then talking about some of the presentations. And I want to say again, Melissa, yours and Alyssa Mount Pleasant, both of yours were just so hard hitting and very relevant, current, and the story of what's going on with the burial grounds, that is the so-called Seneca Indian Park, that is just an outrage, a current and very real outrage. Maybe we start with that one, and then we can talk some more about how the Displacement Summit, some of the other issues that were being talked about there too. So, Melissa, do you want to start, with that?
Sure. I really appreciate the opportunity to present on that's my current project, the Seneca Indian Park, and I think it was really relevant to the overall theme of anti-displacement because it's one of the last remnants of the Buffalo Creek Reservation.
Right.
So, to give a little bit of background on it, Seneca Indian Park is in South Buffalo, off of Seneca Street, and it runs between Buffum Street and Indian Church Road. And the Buffalo Creek Reservation originally was south of Black Rock, covering the entire area of downtown Buffalo, all along the lake. And when Buffalo was designed, the streets were designed while the Senecas still lived there. So it was under the assumption that they would be removed. And South Buffalo became the center of the reservation. It was rural when downtown was being developed. And so it was the center of the reservation. They would hold council fires there. There was a mission house, a school, and it's where Red Jacket lived. I'm descended through Red Jacket. So his house was there. When he died, he was buried in the park, but at the time it was known as Indian Church Cemetery. So that was his original burial place. The Senecas left Buffalo around after the Buffalo Creek Treaty of 1842. So by 1847, they were gone. And they ultimately had the choice to move to south of here, the two reservations, one Allegheny and one's Cattaraugus, or move to Kansas. That was where the federal government purchased land. And that's really where most of government and private developers wanted them to move because they wanted them out of New York State. So when the Senecas left Buffalo, from newspaper articles I've read that they were always under the assumption that the cemetery belonged to them, and it would remain that way because there were hundreds of bodies buried there.
Right.
And Red Jacket was there, and also it was a burial place for local residents who lived in South Buffalo. So what I've discovered is that about 20 or 30 years after the Senecas left, the city didn't know what to do with the cemetery. They didn't want to spend any money on the cemetery. They wanted to, but it needed to be maintained. So they decided to have a discussion during Common Council, and Grover Cleveland was mayor at the time. And in the Common Council meeting minutes, it was Cleveland who stated, we're not going to spend any money on the Indian Church Cemetery. It belongs to the Seneca Nation of Indians. And that was the first indication I've ever seen of that particular piece of land belonging to the Senecas. And so that piqued my interest, and I continued to look into it. Ultimately, what happened was the Larkin family, who had owned the soap company, a wealthy family, purchased that parcel of land and sold it to the city for $1. And they stipulated that it needed to remain a park because they didn't want it to be developed. And what I like about this part of the story is you can find in a Buffalo News article the story of the ceremony that was performed where the Larkins unveiled a monument and donated it to the city. And Senecas were there, and they're in the background. They're not seated, and they were prevented from speaking. And there was a young girl, she was 16 years old, Seneca girl. She had written a speech protesting that the parcel be developed as a park. They didn't want it as a park. It was sacred to them. Their relatives were buried there, and they didn't let them speak. And so I think that the opportunity to talk about the park and be that voice, I'm very appreciative of, because in the past, those voices weren't heard. And so my goal is to just, talk about the park, tell its story, raise awareness, and have it designated what it should be, which is a cemetery, not a park. And when you visit there, which I highly suggest you do because it's very beautiful and peaceful, there's no indication that there's bodies there and that it's a cemetery. And so it's not helpful to have it labeled a park. It gives the wrong impression. So right. Again, I appreciated the opportunity to tell the story.
Well, so I like us to go around actually with the, responses. Now, I know you were both there too, but, and even hearing it now. So Harper, if you want to, just any thoughts?
Yeah, how do you take that all in? It's such a gripping and compelling story, and I'm so grateful to hear it again. My interaction with what I thought was a park, as you said, and there is no indication that it's a cemetery. There's just a marker when you go there. My wife and I essentially happened upon that plot of land, and we did say, "What is this?" And there's a marker that talks about, I think, Red Jacket and some of the descendants, but we truly left we had so many questions coming out of it, and there's so little information, and it's basically like this just exists. And so hearing that story again, just makes, as an organizer, again, as you were telling it, I was like, just listen to the story. Don't take action. Just listen to the story. Don't, so for me, I was thinking, halfway through it, like, what can we do, Melissa? Like, should we be talking to the city government? There's a new council president. Like, that's what our city does. Like, how can we be an allyship to the Seneca Nation as they try to actually get it marked how it should be and how they want it to be, which is as a cemetery, not a park. So that's where my head went. But again, I was like, breathe through it and just listen and take in the information in the story. And there's time for action later. So that's my reaction to your sharing. And again, thank you for sharing it both at the summit and again now.
Thanks, Harper. And Leighton?
Unfortunately, I wasn't able to attend the summit, but hearing the story now is it's heartbreaking, to say the least. And I'm happy that you have been given platforms. I'm happy that we've been able to accommodate you and continue to. And I hope that there has been much change and there has been some type of relief on your end based on the fact that you are able to share and receive some type of feedback to see that people are with you on this. Yes.
Thanks, Leighton. Well, you were there at the end, though. I know you were there at the end. I saw you.
Yes, I got to go to
the final about the blizzard, and we'll certainly be talking about that too. But And I know I feel a lot like you do, Harper. When I think about action, I'm very, action oriented as well. But the depth of the injustice and the pervasiveness of the injustices around land and the indigenous people and back to, I'm glad you brought up about everything that's going on in Israel and Palestine, because it's back to all our issues being connected. And so the lack of care and concern when and the law, because there's laws that protect indigenous burial grounds. So we know that's against the law. So I mean, more to follow on, and certainly with the taking the lead from you and from people that you're working with about how you'd like to see activity come around it. Right now, I think part of action is just having this talking piece available, so it's something that can be shared. It'll be, we're broadcasting now on live stream on WBNY on Monday at noon, this coming Monday at noon, and then it'll be on the Western New York Peace Center YouTube channel as well. So it's something that you could always share as a link so that people could listen. But so that's part of it, of just spreading the awareness, because people don't even know. It's like you said, that the questions get asked, like, what does that mean? Or how could that be? And then also, so now comes the time of spreading that public awareness, so that, and then building the public will to make our electeds make the changes needed. So, it can be done, and it has been done little bit by little bit. Getting Freedom Park, from Broderick Park, that was, it wasn't, it was done. It got done, and it wasn't that hard once we started doing it. I know George Johnson put a lot of work into that, but it was important because the acknowledging, I think about all the wrongs back to BIPOC people and to the populace, right? To the majority of people, right? To the working class people, to all of those injustices. There's a legacy, and that's what we're left with, and that's what we have to work to change, because otherwise, it's current injustices. So anyway, let's just go back on this one more time. Of like, are there some things that you're thinking of that you'd like to see in the next while? What are some of your thoughts, Melissa, about what you might like to see people help you with to move this forward?
Well, that's a difficult question to answer, simply because I feel like I've been on a journey since my father passed away that I wasn't on prior to the last year. And I think I've just been focusing on figuring out the story of the Seneca's Buffalo Creek Reservation, and in particular the park project. But I simply appreciate any opportunity to just talk about what I've been learning of my own history, that is really our shared collected history. Mm-hmm. And so I feel like I'm at the beginning of this story, and I don't have a clear vision yet of how it will unfold, but simply just appreciative of any interest in any sort of person who's going to continue to tell the story, because that's the most important part of it right now.
Well, I think what you've heard, though, is that, you have bunches of people, those of us on the call, of course, and the organizations that we work with, and then there's so many people who were there at the Anti-Displacement Summit, who all heard your story as well, and the connections to other local issues as well. So just know that, as things start to become clear, clarify themselves, or ideas present themselves, maybe you want to gather some people together to have a brainstorming session or something, or if you have other, whatever you want to, well, to continue, like you said, spreading the word, and then things will percolate. I know Harper's already talking about some ideas that actually sounded like ideas, so to be continued. So
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it because I'm just starting to form allyships, and I'm very excited about connections like this because that's how you make things happen. And
Yep.
so I feel excited that this is the beginning of this opportunity.
Yep. We're gonna get there. So can I go back to you, Harper, and talk a little bit about how the Anti-Displacement Summit was born and how it's been developing over the years, and sort of some of your points on it.
Yeah, so thanks for asking. We have been doing this. This is the 5th annual, but it's been actually much longer that the coalition has existed. It was back in 2016, 2017 that a group of organizers came together and we're talking about how it is that we could build power in the city and statewide at that time too, because we were headed to Albany on bus trips as we do, advocating for housing justice and transportation and all these other issues that are part of the Anti-Displacement Summit at this point. And our first summit was held in the Matt Urban Center in 2017. We always do it in November, December, because that's when the snow starts to fly, and it becomes particularly important that we be thinking about our neighbors and the people that live in the city and that would be displaced by rising rents, the rent being too damn high, and all the other policies that we need in a people's agenda. And so we came together and talked about we didn't feel like we were the great oracle or Stu Sears or anything like that. That really we see that in urban legacies and in coastal cities across the United States and urban developed areas, what ultimately happens is that white flight and people who left the city essentially come back now more affluent and with more money, and they displace essentially all the people that are poor working class, Black, Indigenous, Latinx, and people of color, and displace them out of their homes, and then they are scattered in various places. We just heard a story of like the first ring suburbs, or in the Indigenous story that you just shared, Kansas. It was somewhere completely different that they have no cultural connection to, is not their land, and land is such an important and relevant part of the story of displacement and what that does psychologically, emotionally, spiritually, and and all the other things that we know. So we started to discuss what it would look like to build kind of a multi-issue platform. And if you can remember all the way back then, this is when the Buffalo Billion is really, and billions of dollars are pouring of public dollars into the city of Buffalo. But what is that money going towards but to line the pockets of the richest people in the world, like Elon Musk and Tesla, instead of to build a more equitable, city for all of us, and to lift, people out of poverty and address the issue of segregation and poverty in our city. And so, as unfortunately we've seen, the stratification is even more over the last, since we began the coalition, which is almost, not quite 10 years, but 7-8 years. It's just only increased, right? That income inequality is now more. The rich have gotten richer, the poor have gotten poorer, and we're left to kind of pick up the pieces. So when we approached the city of Buffalo at that point, they called us alarmists. They said that gentrification and displacement was far into the future. It would never happen. And at the same time, as we just heard of the history of Buffalo, they're planning for displacement to occur, even as they're saying it's not happening, right? So it's the kind of double speak that we hear of planning a different city for a different, for a different population, while at the same time denying that it's happening. So the Displacement Summit has always tried to serve as a reminder every year that we need to continue to look at ourselves in the mirror and be very honest in our assessment about who we are and who we are not and where we need to go. And we see so many people's voices, so many folks who spend every day literally fighting for these policies and working to create a more just and equitable Buffalo. But the forces and the political elite and the power elite have a very different version and vision for our city. And that's what we're pushing up against. And that's kind of the legacy history of our city, Buffalo, hosting, the Anti-Displacement Summit every November, December, in order to give voice to what is really happening on the ground to our people.
Amen. 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 Absolutely. And thank God. And thank you all for having it. So, Leighton, what would you want to add about the anti-displacement work?
I would say, in addition to that the Anti-Displacement Summit was also created because we want to look at the past and learn from the past going into the future. So it's not only about events that has happened, but it's about events that we foresee happening and what can we do in efforts to make it more equitable, and to ensure that all residents are involved. And a lot of times, even like the Common Council, or when we're talking about like anything government-wide, we tend to say citizens. And citizens is exclusive to immigrants that live here. It's exclusive to people who aren't citizens. And we know that Buffalo is a hotspot for immigration and relocation. And so we put effort into making sure that everyone is included. And so we always use residents in our wording. And I feel like it feels a lot more inclusive to everyone that is in our city. And so for me, the Anti-Displacement Summit is tackling issues that are ongoing, but it's also finding or paving a path for us to think realistically, strategically, analytically about how we want to move forward.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Very well put. So it's so important. And I mean, I think that the imbalances and the injustices are so entrenched that people don't even see them sometimes, or people get this, it's back to, what is it, when you have the put the frog or the whatever it is in the kettle, and you're just slowly heating it up, so they don't realize that it's getting hotter and hotter and hotter and hotter. So the people are like, well, this is how it's always been. And to me, one of the things, there were so many topics that were covered, and education, housing, safe, affordable housing, of course, which is one of the first things you go to when you're talking about land and physicality of where you're living. But, the health inequities, educational inequities. And I want to bring it to, which you also, I definitely know, I didn't go to this breakout session, but I know you had one on transportation. And to me, transportation is so huge when you have a third of the people in Buffalo do not have a car, and they don't even have shelters or seats or anything for people waiting out in the snow, and all of the self-help stuff that people have had to do, and that has come, the mutual aid, the shovel brigades and all that comes from the people who care, that the activists, the people on the street, the people who are helping out their neighbors and things like that. But when our city doesn't have a decent public transportation system that will accommodate people in evening or weekends or anything other than your standard 9 to 5, and when there are so many ways that the transportation issue shines a light on, if you don't have money, you don't matter. Right? The third of the people who don't have a car, their issues not discussed. So if you want to talk, so I want to say the economic injustice, as along with the the racism, the bigotry, the working against BIPOC and immigrants, and some of that, of all of that connected issues, comes a big one: the economic injustice that is imposed on those middle and working class people, and especially the poorest of the poor, especially the more.
Well,
So
go ahead. Those who rely on public transportation have to, so there is no choice. And what really needs to change is that we need to encourage people who don't have to rely on it, who have cars, to start to take public transportation too. But the trend since COVID has been to get rid of bus routes, get rid of bus stops, and to increase waiting times. Elmwood, for example, in the last couple months, has gotten rid of each one of the Elmwood route. Has every other stop is gone. It used to come every 20 minutes. Now it comes every 40 minutes. And so people who don't have a car or are disabled, elderly, have to use the buses. And these changes are happening without any sort of public input since COVID, because there used to be hugely attended NFTA meetings at like ECC campus, and COVID really got rid of a lot of those meetings. And so since then it's really frustrating for that issue.
It's
I love
just
that you
huge. Go ahead, Leighton.
I love that you brought that up because, like, I was working with Jewish Family Services, which is a refugee resettlement agency, right? And so many of the immigrants there have to use public transportation because they're coming here trying to find work, in poverty, things of that nature. And so a lot of the bus stops in their communities were old bus stops, and they were removed without them being aware. And so people used to stand there and wait on buses that would never come. And so that brought up us reaching out to the NFTA and them and in essence basically saying that they don't have to let people know when bus stops are going to be shut down. And that to me is like, why is it that poor people have to consistently suffer in these many ways and in efforts to make a living? People don't want to just take the bus for fun. People are taking the bus because it's a necessity, because it's giving them access to something that they don't have access to. And the fact that these things are being ripped right from underneath them without being able to even have a say in it, it's like, it's ridiculous to me. It's like living in an autocratic city where they don't have a voice in the decisions that are being made around them that involve them.
Right. Harper, you want to add something on that?
No, I think they both said it really well.
I
don't want to add anything
go ahead.
Yeah, other than that, I would just say that last point is really important, and I think Melissa brought it up as well, which is we keep on trying to bring up, we're looking for democracy, for participatory governance, for co-governance, for people who are electing officials. It's not that we elect you and then we go away for 4 years and we'll see you at the polls and that's our participation. No, being a resident, as Leighton has said, is to be there every day and to continue to give feedback. And so we expect that, folks are responding to us, and that there's not input into, whether it's NFTA and riders who are actually, utilizing the system, giving feedback, because a lot of times it's bureaucrats who have never even used the bus telling people what it is that they need. And they're like, crazy and asinine. And then, as Leighton said, then we have elected officials who are making decisions based on, as you said, it's economic security issue. It's, your livelihood, it's all those things. And there's no input being given. And so the lack of democracy for us is a crisis. Like, we feel that every day in the city of Buffalo, that there is less participation, that there is less say, that there is less voices being heard. And that's a problem. No matter where you are on the spectrum politically, no matter what policies you think need to be prioritized, we at least need the voices of the people to be in the space, in the room, and we deserve a seat at the table.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, and that's something that I would say certainly that our city, Buffalo, has been so focused on, and everything from our city, Buffalo, and our city Action, Buffalo, has been oriented to that. And I would say also the Western New York Peace Center has been very oriented to the needs, it's peace through justice at home and abroad. So the justice part means economic justice, racial justice, all of the justices. And certainly it is the extreme injustice of not taking care of the needs of people when your whole job is to take care of the needs of people. That's what the transportation system is for. And actually I've told my story before, but I came to Buffalo intending to go without a car. And then I don't know if you ever heard this. One day I was getting asked for rides an awful lot, and I thought, boy, I wish I didn't have a car. And the next day, my car was gone. I said it to myself. I just prayed it to myself. I wish I didn't have a car. And the next day, my car was gone. And let me tell you, they found it, but then I didn't replace it. So I went on public transportation for I had gone without public transportation for half of my adult life. So I loved not having a car, but then I was living in the country, so I had to have a car. So when I moved here, I was happy to go without a car until I saw what our public transportation system was. And it's only been worse since there. And so the thing is that persuading people to use it, you can't use it when it's this vicious circle, because the worse it is, the more anybody who has another option doesn't use it, because it's just that inconvenient. It's just that inconvenient to even find out, like you say, So I feel like that is just one of the things where the lack of care and concern for the common good and the public good is a glaring thing here in Buffalo. So what I like to invite you, and we're getting towards the end of the show, So just a couple more highlights out of some of the issues that were discussed. I know I was in the education seminar. That was great. There's a lot of good things happening, but there's a lot of back to participation and input needed to make sure that things are being done that we need. So that's
there were so many things that happened. It was hard and dizzying, but we had immigration was also talked about pretty robustly. Our friends at Frontline Arts Buffalo gave their thoughts on how to center the arts. And when they use the term frontline arts, they're really talking about the fact that they serve as much more than just artistic endeavors or institutions, but they're community centers as well, that they are teaching our folks. And the funding there is unequitable, that we see, big institutions like the AKG or Birchfield Penny bring in millions of dollars. Well, Ujima Theater or the Langston Hughes is closed. And why is that? There's needs to be more broad investment into these frontline organizations, arts and cultural. We had Push Buffalo, of course, talking about the climate crisis and catastrophe, which I think will segue pretty soon to talking about the blizzard. And, they're talking about a fight that's been ongoing for them for over 15 years, which is of national fuel and rate hikes and using, this outdated infrastructure and fossil fuel infrastructure to continue to raise the rates on working and poor people. We also know that that's an Indigenous rights and sovereignty issue as well, because those pipelines often go through those territories and again break the law and are illegal formations. And we've seen it across the country, and it has hit us here at home. Again, it's not just Standing Rock or whatever people are looking to, but it's right here in Western New York and Buffalo. And so we just had so many conversations throughout the day that I can't even tell you. And also just skill-based as well. There were people like Andrea O'Sullivan from the Partnership for Public Good who taught us how to even just engage with the Common Council. If you have an issue, how do you get in front of them? How do you get it passed? How do you whip the votes and get legislation enacted, especially amongst the gridlock? And just, again, underlying current of participatory government and the need for us to have engaged residents and elected officials who are responsive to that. So yeah, so much happened in a 4-hour period, and good food in the middle of it.
Yes, it was
brought to us by KT Caribbean. So just want to give a shout out to Terry and her crew. They did an amazing job as well.
Yes, they did. That was great too. I mean, and just the good company, the just huge amount of the choice. That would be the only difficult part, the choices. There were so many choices. So now the one thing I'd say, as we go around, let's do a final go round. And I also want to just say, be sure to put in there too about whether there's anything accessible, what is accessible from there, but with the emphasis, if there's any recordings or something that can be found, but especially how can people get more involved? What are some of the avenues for some of the issues that you think of that are avenues, what you like people to take away from this and do? So again, so why don't we go around just Harper, Leighton, and Melissa, and then me.
Yeah, so you've mentioned us a few times. Our City Buffalo, our City Action Buffalo, they're sibling organizations. Our City Buffalo is a C3 organization that creates a policy platform and brings together multi-issue platform in front of our elected officials and the residents of Buffalo. And then our City Action Buffalo takes that and uses it as a way to endorse candidates and hold elected officials accountable to the values and principles that we hold near and dear to our hearts as a progressive organization in the city of Buffalo. Fighting for a more just, equitable, and fair Buffalo, and have been doing that for many years, as we've discussed. And we are actually hosting a webinar on January 18th at 6 p.m. The link will become available on our website, and all those that attended the summit will be getting an email to talk about emergency preparedness, because we also celebrated the 1-year anniversary of the Buffalo blizzard and the 47 plus individuals whose names we do know and those who remain unknown to us, who we saw, again, the ultimate displacement. They were, they died as a result of what we believe was government unpreparedness, inaction, and neglect. And so we want to remember them, and we also want to make sure that that never happens again. And so we are championing what I'm calling this year an outside-inside strategy, which is that we're taking care of ourselves through mutual aid and building the infrastructure we need as a community. And we're also holding our elected officials accountable and bringing ourselves in closer relationship to those who would co-govern with us and champion our policies and again, put a progressive foot forward in what it is that we all need. So please feel free to join us on January 18th at 6 p.m. Again, all of our social media, you can find the link. You need to register to be involved, but we hope that you'll spend the year with us and getting involved in some of the things you heard today. And we'll have links to our partner organizations, of which we discussed some of that tonight as well. So thanks for the opportunity again, Vicki.
Oh, wonderful. No, thank you so much, Harper. Absolutely. Leighton, anything you want to add? Ways that people can get more involved? That's one of them. So go ahead.
What I can say is that please add us on social media or Instagram or Facebook. Or Instagram for Or City Action Buffalo is, as the name says, Or City Action Buffalo. And our Instagram for Or City Buffalo is, as the name says, Or City Buffalo. Our Twitter is the same. And we are on Facebook as well. All of those platforms we update pretty frequently. And so if there is any events that we are hosting, that we are supporting, that we are endorsing, then we will post those events on those platforms where you can register. And we definitely keep you in tune. We post a lot about the different ways that we support our community and the different ways that we take action. And so for Or City Action Buffalo, that looks very different from what Or City Buffalo does. And it's very much a good way to stay involved in the decision making that happens in our city from both platforms. Other than that, it was a pleasure being here. It was a pleasure being in this space. Melissa, thank you so much for being a part of the Anti-Displacement Summit and for your continuous support. And thank you for being here in this space as well. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Leighton. Thank you for all of that and all the wonderful communications work you do. And you make it very much fun, too. You definitely does. So thank you for that. Absolutely. And Melissa?
I just want to say how appreciative I am of beginning the relationship with both organizations. And as far as upcoming ways to get involved, NACS, Native American Community Services, is a great start for that. So they have the Facebook page, and they often hold community events. One in which is cultural competency. And I do know of a racial healing circle that's upcoming. It's All Our Relations Racial Healing Circle. It's taking place on Wednesday, January 17th. At the UU Church of Buffalo from 6 to 8:30 p.m. So that's an upcoming event to get involved in. And also on April 6th, UB has their Storytellers Conference, which will be a day-long event of Indigenous leaders, activists, educators, who will hold different workshops and presentations about modern Indigenous issues. And that's a really great day-long event to attend.
Well, those sound wonderful. Those are absolutely great. And then, we certainly want to keep plugged in with you, certainly this, like I said, this talking piece session is easily shared different times and ways. And also, letting us know, how and when, what you'd like support with, or if there's an event or an opportunity to really take a stand and push for that change of really recognizing it as a burial ground and doing, giving it the reverence and the space that it needs and where it belongs, which it belongs to be sacred ground and recognized as such.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, yeah, so we love to keep us posted. And I think I can speak for all of us on that. You have all of our contact info of every kind. And I have to say, it is such a thrill to me first of all, for the displacement, Anti-Displacement Summit is so critical because it does what I'm always thinking we need to do, which is showing the commonalities in our issues. So we've got all these different issues but they're all related in that, it's about where do the resources and the energy and the attention go? Does it go to the common good or not? And the answer is so often not. And does it go into something positive or does it go into Fear Inc., which is, the policing and it's everybody behind a gun. This is why I'm always saying, why do all the people behind a gun are the ones that get the money? The police, the sheriffs, the carceral system, and of course the military. So if all those resources came to us, then we would be able to take care of people's needs for safe housing and a just transition and respecting the sacred places and all the things that we need to do to take care of each other and be together. So first of all, I can't thank all of you, each of you, enough for all that you do all year long, not just at the Anti-Displacement Summit, but that was a wonderful gathering of all of that. And we're very excited about the 18th and all there is to come. So I just can't thank you, each of you, enough. Harper and Leighton and Melissa, especially. So to all of you, just extreme thanks, Yahweh. And we're just so grateful. And so this is Talking Peace. And together we've been talking peace in truth and love. Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I think now is Harper still here?
No,
Or no?
he seemed to have disconnected when you said.
Oh, okay. He might have. That's fine. That's fine. So and thank you, Richard. I almost went back into thanking you too. So anyway, so this should be it'll be on the Western New York Peace Center YouTube channel, as well as all the places it is on Facebook. So Richard, you put it on the Western New York Peace Center Facebook page, right?
No, I had too many things to do.
Oh, well, if you could you just do that?
I might be able to, yes. Yes, I might.
That would be great. That would be great. So anyway, well, I just wanted to make sure that we end up, that's our sweet spot, that we try to end it at 58 minutes. That's what the engineer at WBNY told us. It's the ideal time. So.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm going to sign off and.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for all your time and all your work. Thanks so much. Take care. You too. You too. And contact me anytime.
Okay.
William.
Have a good one, Vicki. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Leighton. Thanks so much. Great to see you when I saw you. Okay, so now it's just you and me, Richard.
Yes, it is.
Well, thanks so much. So, did you hear anything of the show or not?
Oh, yeah. I was listening in the other room while I was getting my food ready.
Oh, okay.
I did not know about the whole cemetery thing and about the Senecas being forced to leave in 1847.
Right. Right. No, she did a great job. And I felt like it was a good, strong, there was just so much to talk about. It's very much to talk about. But anyway, I just thought, and actually then it turned out to be snowing, though I don't think it amounted to much. But,
you mean while the show was on, it was snowing outdoors?
Well, it was snowing today. I don't know if it was still snowing, but I know it was snowing today. At least here it was. I don't know if it was snowing where you are.
Barely enough to cover the ground.
Oh, it just had a dusting, but
yeah.
But anyway, no, it was more. I did go to something yesterday, but mostly